Hey, cousins. You already know it's me, David Alexander. I'm a psychology student trying to heal and a model trying to age. And I want to ask, what is unconditional love really? Right? Like, does love really conquer all? You, like love is powerful, but it's not magic. And for some reason, we seem to think that it is. Boundaries don't negate love. So I'm asking the question, what is unconditional love? Right? And I want to break down what we've been taught unconditional love is and what it really means, right? So I'm using my phone today, y'all, because I took notes this time. I know sometimes I just be going off the head. I'm probably still gonna do that today. But I do have a couple things that I want to make sure I touch on as we talk about unconditional love. Okay. So my very first question is unconditional love healthy? Or even is it realistic? Because when we think about unconditional love, I think we think about going above and beyond, bending over backwards, taking a shirt off your back and giving it to another person. But then you got to ask the question, when does that become self abandonment? Right. And I'll think about my mother teaching me about unconditional love. And my mom, I used to say all the time, like, my mom was the most giving person I've ever met. Like, she's literally one of those people, she will truly give you the shirt off her back. And as I've gotten older, going to therapy, in school myself and learning things, I realize how harmful that behavior is and how harmful that is to continue to teach one another. No, that does not mean that you can't help other people. No, that doesn't mean that you can't be giving. But again, at what point does unconditional love or overextending yourself turn into self abandonment? So I'll use this idea, right? Of if it's freezing outside, you cold, I'm cold. I got on a shirt, you don't have on a shirt, right? I give you the shirt off my back. Now I'm cold and the cycle continues. Does that make sense? And I use that analogy all the time and the idea of that because it's like maybe we need to find other ways to be supportive and giving and show love that doesn't mean that we have to now be out in the cold, right? So that's why I ask, is unconditional love healthy? Is it real? Is it realistic? Is it even sustainable? These are all questions that I've started to ask myself when I think about unconditional love. So I'll ask it again. Is unconditional love healthy or is it just unlimited tolerance? Now, let me break that down before you start being like, nah, 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 nah. Love is love. Yeah, we get that. But I think unconditional love sometimes means that we allow ourselves to be abused because we believe love is strong enough to overpower the abuse. Or I think that a lot of people confuse love with staying or tolerating or accepting less than what they deserve. I'll use my own personal story, part of it at least, because y'all love to be in my business. But y'all heard me talk about my exes before. And there's a very specific relationship that I was in um for almost 3 years, right? And I've talked about this very relationship a lot. A lot happened in that time. But I remember that relationship, and even after the relationship, a lot of people are like, "Oh my god, I can't believe y'all broke up. There was just y'all just seemed like y'all loved each other so much." And it's true, we did, right? And dare I say, we might even still do. But that doesn't mean that it gives us space to overlook the disrespect that we both gave to one another. It doesn't overlook cheating. It doesn't overlook the boundaries that were crossed. And I think that sometimes we think unconditional love means that you stay through it, you stick it out. And I think at one point in life that used to be real for like our grandparents and our great grandparents, but they were in relationships out of survival, right? Think about women not being able to have bank accounts until I think it was like late 50s, early 60s. Don't quote me on that. I am not a historian. But women had to be in relationships for survival, or even think about queer relationships. Those relationships were in the dark. They didn't get to love openly, so they had to maneuver even those things a little differently. Or we think about that idea that like gay men or men in general are very promiscuous and very sexually driven. And it's sometimes like, is that true? Or is that because of the result of what happened? Because they had to do everything in secret. And some of these people had relationships with women and then had to go into that space. And then does unconditional love now mean, as a gay man, that I have to deal with DL men because that's the only way that I'm able to receive love? And it's the only way that I'm able to give love, is I have to love this person unconditionally that will not ever fully be mine. Right. And this is a concept, I think, that where unconditional love does become self abandonment. It does become a battle of you versus them. And I know we don't like that idea, but it, I think that's the reality, right? Um, and I think that there is space in which where we can be a little bit more selfish in love while still being very loving, caring, nurturing, and all of that. It's my personal journey that I'm on right now of understanding that I have to disappoint people in order to get the things that I need and want in life. Excuse me. There is no way for me to exist for other people without putting myself first. It's the idea of you got to put your mask on first before you put the oxygen on the kid. Now I know everybody like, I'm putting the oxygen on my baby first. But if you put the oxygen on your baby first, then now your kid could be without a parent. Versus maybe if you had done it the other way, right? Put your mask on first and then put theirs on. Maybe both of you survive instead of one of you, right? I don't know the odds. Don't get to asking me about um statistics because I don't know the statistics of survival rates in those situations. But I use that as an example of, even in those situations and life or death situations, we are advised to take care of ourselves first so that we can be present for other people. And I think there are multiple forms of unconditional love that has been taught to us that's unhealthy. I think as Black people, unconditional love from parent to child, I think it's probably one of the most unhealthy spaces in which where air quote unconditional love exists. Um, where parents become so enthralled with their children's lives that they lose their entire existence in their children. And it's actually something I talk to my siblings about because they all got kids. Again, reminder, just in case y'all don't know, I have 8 siblings. So there are 9 of us. My mom and dad had 5 together, and then they both had 2 before they got married. So that's the 9 of us. I'm number 8 of the 9. I ain't got no kids. I like boys. My bad. Um, and I have to plan that out. But the main, my main point behind that is, even now I talk to my siblings and I encourage them to not be so engulfed in your children that you lose a life of your own. Because what happens when all your kids grow up? What happens when they move out and you have nothing left to do other than, and do you want to be that parent where your kids are trying to live their life and you hijack their life because you don't know how to accept that life moves on, or that you don't know how to accept that, yes, you will always be a parent, but you don't have to be a parent in the way in which means that you devote your entire existence to your children. And I think even that concept sounds crazy to people. I remember when I first said that to my sister, Danielle, and she was like, no, David, you don't get it because you don't have kids. And telling her business a little bit, over the years, I've noticed that even her idea around it has shifted. And she's like, you know what? My youngest is going to high school next year. She like, and I know she's going to go to college and do the things. My nephew has kids now. And it's like, you will always be their mother, Danielle. But what happens when they no longer need you to be their mother in this way? Do you want to be the mom that your kid's 30, 40 years old and they don't know how to make choices or decisions for themselves? Or do you want to be the parent that is so wrapped up in your children's life? Like I said, you don't know what you like to do anymore. You don't know what the idea of fun is, right? So when we think about unconditional love and, like I said, the unhealthy ways that it exists, I think of those type of things. I think about parents who don't have a life. You dedicate everything to setting your children up properly, which is not a bad thing, and you should. As a parent, it is your responsibility to take care of these children you brought into the world, right? But I do think that there is a limit. In the word of Carrie Hilson, my love has a limit. I used to make this I used to make that joke all the time, but it's real for me. My love has a limit. Um, Romantically, platonically, familial relationships, right? Um, because I can no longer love at the risk of myself. And that has become a very hard concept to accept. Learning it, I think, was easy. Understanding it was easy. Accepting it has been hard. Because I would love to sit here and say, when I think about unconditional love and the last person I loved romantically, that I didn't want to try to stick it out. I didn't want to figure it out because I did. But so many things had come up in the relationship that love was not enough. Which leads me to the other question of, when we think of unconditional love, I think this is also coexisting with the idea that love conquers all. And I'm going to apologize in advance when I say this. Anyone who believes that love conquers all, that is a very naive and immature thought, because love is not enough to make anything sustainable. Love is not enough to make anything work. Love is a great feature, a great asset, a great thing to be connected to your relationships, whether it's platonic, romantic, or with your family. Love is a great thing to have in there, and you should have love and real care and concern for the people that you've chosen to have in your life. But to go through the world to think that love conquers all, I think is a setup for heartbreak and disappointment, extreme disappointment at that. Because I think the idea that love conquers all goes back to the idea that of unconditional love, that you tolerate so much or you accept so much. I hear things like, a man gonna be a man. I've watched women actively get into relationships with men that they love with their entire being, but constantly accept the disrespect or the lack of affection, the lack of attention, the lack of actually sustaining the relationship itself, you know? Um, so yeah. And you probably wonder, David, where you come up with this at? Like, where did this thought come from? Um, and if you ever watch this, I will not call you out by name, but I was dating someone not too long ago, and we had a conversation. He bought me this really, really, really cool book. Sidebar: if y'all know me, I geek out about the most random. Well, not most random, but I geek out about very specific things. I geek out about music. Listen, if you ever want to see me light up and go crazy, start having conversations with me about music, because I can talk about music, the music business, artists, eh, forever. Just last night, my partner and I were sitting up, and he doesn't like Ed Sheeran, and I don't know what his beef is, but I was like, babe, you got to listen to this. So I'm like playing. Um, so I started playing some of the songs, and he was like, "So what's this folk music?" And I was like, "Shut up! It's good music. Listen to the lyrics. Listen to the song. Listen to the melody." And he like, "It's a good song. I still don't like it." I said, "Cool. I can accept that you don't like it, but you ain't gonna never say I played you a bad song. Period." Anyway, I geek out about that. I geek out about anything related to psychology, which is why I am a psychology student. And I love the idea of the science behind all things. But with that, there's some, if you, okay, so if you are in a relationship, if you've never seen this, you've never heard of this, right? You should always look up a compatibility test. Okay. With the compatibility test, it does not tell you if you and your person are meant to be together forever or none of that. What it does, though, is allows you to have deeper conversations about the things in your relationship that matter, right? Um, you've probably heard me mention things like the big three, your non-negotiables, and stuff like that. But a compatibility test, my introduction to it was therapy with my ex. We're in therapy. We do the compatibility test. I realized that me and this person are extremely compatible. And y'all probably like, if y'all was compatible, why did y'all break up? I don't have an answer to that, but I will say it this way that the compatibility test, again, led me to understand that we were extremely compatible and very similar, which I always knew. But having it on paper, in writing, in his words and in my words, and realizing how in sync they were also helped me realize how unhealthy we both were in the relationship. So back to the main point. So I was dating somebody. He bought me for Valentine's Day, bought me this really, really cool book. And it's basically like I call it like a large compatibility test. It's just all these different things where one person answers and the next person answers. So we go through a couple of them together, right? I think one of them was it's like I think one of them asks is love uh spiritual something, whatever, y'all. You get the point. There are a ton of questions related to just how we see the world. And then it came to the question that love conquers all. Option number one was absolutely. Option number two is don't be ridiculous, right? So I asked this question to this person that I'm dating, and because I'm geeking out. I love this book, right? His response was absolutely, and I was like, ooh, ooh. He's like, what? I was like, I don't believe that love conquers all. One, it helped me realize that we were not necessarily compatible in the way that we see healthy relationships. And two, it really made me start thinking about the idea of what does unconditional love look like? What does it look like for love to conquer all? And no, this is not me saying that I live a life lovelessly. I have so much love in my life, from family to friends, the love I have for myself. Um, I just think that as Black people, we are still continuously passing down these really, the word I'll use, interesting concepts to our children, such as love conquering all, right? So I'll ask the question again. When does unconditional love become self abandonment? And I'm not here to answer that question for you. This is just me doing what I do, sharing my thoughts, letting y'all into what's happening up here for me, and hopefully that connects to you somewhere. But love is meant to be a tool. It's not meant to be the end all be all. I think love is a great guiding tool to like how to treat people. The question I ask myself and I ask people a lot now is, instead of saying treat people how you want to be treated, I start asking people, when was the last time you treated yourself the way that you want to be treated? And I've realized I don't think I've asked that to one person that hasn't been like, oh. And when I think of unconditional love, I think it's also unrealistic to have unconditional love for other people without first knowing how to love yourself. Right. And y'all hear me say that all the time. I'm always talking about self love, self growth, self improvement. But then the question comes down to, are you offering yourself the same things that you offer to other people? And most times we don't. So when I think about unconditional love and the unhealthy nature of it, it's because we're loving from in a deficit, is the way I like to look at it. You're loving from a space in which you don't have any space to give. You don't have anything to give in the space of love because you haven't really even attempted to figure it out. And then we think about romantic relationships. We get into relationships, and yeah, that doesn't mean you haven't loved someone, but you get into these relationships and your entire life becomes a relationship. I can talk about me. I'm sure I've said it before. I'm sure I'll say it again. One of the hardest things for me to do, because it was like love is everything. One of the hardest things for me to do when I was dating back in the day was not being completely engulfed in the relationship or being completely engulfed in my partner. So I guess if I had to go back and answer the question I asked earlier about me saying that my ex and I were extremely compatible, but we were not healthy. We were not good for each other in that time. I think some of it is because I was loving from a deficit and so was he. Neither of us knew how to love ourselves properly, let alone love each other properly. Um, and I do think that it starts with self. I think that I'll say it this way, for me, I've enjoyed the process that I've been going through and understanding what I do and don't like. What does make me happy? What does feel good to me? What doesn't feel good? Why doesn't it feel good? And I think for me, it has allowed me to have, honestly, I think this is some of the most honest love that I've experienced in my life. And I'll use my friendships, right? Having a conversation with my best friend and telling her that I don't love being touched. There's a long story. My therapist and I are going through a bunch of stuff. We actually talked about it today. Sherry and I are going through a bunch of stuff related to my childhood and where that may be coming from, right? But anyway, I tell my best friend this. One of my best friends, I've known her, we closer to 15 years than we are to 10 years of friendship. And it wasn't until about 2, maybe 3 years ago, max, that I actually voiced that I didn't like to be touched and that it made me uncomfortable, right? And being able to say that, and you're like, what does this have to do with unconditional love? Me doing the work and learning to love myself and figure out what I do and don't like allows me to be honest with other people, right? And I think that's the truest form of love that we can have, is being able to be honest and open with one another, even if it hurts. My best friend is a very touchy feely person. She will lay her head on your shoulder. She will put her head on your lap. She's a baby, right? Like, that's what I say. She's a baby, and I love you, girl. Don't let anybody ever tell you I don't love you. What I tell you all the time, right? But I say that to say this. It started with me being able to figure out things for myself to be able to have that moment with her, so that her and I now have, there are parts of my relationship with her that I say sometimes, like, in order for me to get into a relationship, the person I get with has a lot to do, because my friends make up so much of me, right? In the aspect of the love that I receive. My friends do things like send me flowers, or we'll do stuff like, I'll call my friend, like, have you eaten lunch, and like sent her $20? Or like, it's just, I say all of this to say, to get to the end of it all, is this: love is a great guiding tool. Love cannot be the end all be all. It can't be the only beacon that you use. You have to use all of your tools. And some of those tools involve therapy. Some of those tools involve unlearning unhealthy things. And Black people, we have a lot of unhealthy learning to do. No, it's not your fault. No one's mad at you. But I do think at a certain time in life, we have to adjust and we have to shift. And I think we spend so much time talking about or being about loving other people that we forget the main person that we need to love is us. And because we forget that, we tend to not love other people properly. So again, is unconditional love even healthy? Does it make sense? Is unconditional love realistic? Is the idea that love conquers all really true? And like I said, for me, it doesn't. So I'm going to end y'all with this, because like I said, I had notes. Okay. And my clothing note for this cousin is this: maybe love doesn't conquer all, right? But it does let us know what we're willing to tolerate. And when we find the love within ourselves, we start to ask ourselves, do I just want to tolerate things? Or do I want to find happiness, joy, and authentic love that doesn't hurt? Love comes with a work, but I don't think love should hurt. And I think sometimes with unconditional love, it comes with a lot of pain. No, I'm not bitter. I'm not hateful. I love love. I love being in love. I love the idea of love. I love seeing people in love. But I do think that we have to learn to love in healthy ways. So with that, cousin, y'all made it through another tangent. Yeah. So I'm gonna say the thing that I don't say, but I need to say this because it is very important to me. I need you to like, share, subscribe, tell your mama, tell your daddies, tell your cousins to listen to the show and watch us on YouTube. Yeah. I appreciate y'all. Sending mad love to y'all. And I'm gonna see y'all on the next episode. Peace.